You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. We have a special edition of the show today. I've got some incredibly talented recovery life coaches joining me. And this episode is all going to be about surviving your family during the holidays. So I'd like to welcome my guests. I've got Meredith Wickliffe joining me, Amber Jamison, Kristina Dennis, and Michelle Rowley, all recovered life coaches on recoveredlife.us. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you. Welcome.
I am so glad that we are all together here today talking about this. Look, I know that each of you guys are experts in what you do, and a lot of it has to do with codependency, the family unit, co-occurring disorders, staying sober, day-to-day staying sober. So I'm glad that we were able to do this show because I think it's going to help a lot of people, because not only surviving sober if you have an alcohol or drug problem, but just surviving your family during the holidays and not feeling like you're an emotional wreck could be really, really rough. So I wanted to have this conversation today to really kind of dial in on this, because it's such an important topic. Meredith, I wanted to talk with you first. Welcome to the show. I want to talk with you about the whole family, dealing with the family. Why is dealing with the family so darn difficult during the holidays if you're in recovery?
Well, I guess for me, growing up in dysfunction, we don't really know that it's dysfunction. So it becomes like very normal. And once you start getting into recovery and you start learning some of the new tools, you start practicing some of the behaviors, it's very, very different. It feels very odd. It feels completely abnormal, almost like you're learning a different language. So it's not your native language. So you have to work extra hard at it as you're learning, because you're still living life. Life still happens in recovery. I know for me, managing my expectations was the hardest thing. Because if everybody else would just do what I wanted them to do, then the world would be great, right? My world didn't work like that. So I had to make some adjustments. And in order for me to do that, I had to become very well aware of what my dysfunctional patterns were and how I was thinking. And one of the biggest tools that helped me was being able to accept that drug addiction is a disease and being able to show them love and compassion. So I could expect them to show up exactly as they were, and I didn't have to blame them or shame them any kind of way. And I did that my whole life, and I became very miserable and bitter in doing that. When I shifted my mindset and I started managing my own expectations, life with family got a whole lot better, and I became a lot better also.
Well, you're mentioning patterns here, and I think that's one of the things that you start to see, I think, when you're in recovery, is like, wow, maybe some of these patterns that I'm dealing with or seeing, they're not healthy. How did you start to separate what you thought was healthy and unhealthy behavior?
For me, it was all based on how I felt. I always felt alone. I felt very isolated. And I didn't know why. I thought there was something wrong with me. And there wasn't anything wrong with me, other than I had been raised in dysfunction and didn't realize it. So when I had to first really take a look at myself, I got into recovery trying to get someone else sober because I didn't have a problem. So I thought. But I learned very quickly that these patterns, they're behavioral patterns, and they are very universal in drug addiction, alcoholism, workaholism, codependency. They are all very familiar. They're universal. So in examining those patterns, I never would have been able to examine my patterns had I not gotten into recovery. But that was where it all began with me. I am a recovering codependent, and it all started with me. And that was the shift. When I came in, everybody else was the problem. But I've stayed now for me because I was the one that needed the work. I was the one that needed the healing. I was the one that needed to change the way I thought. I couldn't change how I lived. I couldn't change my past. couldn't hope for a better childhood. So I had to start living right in the moment, living one day at a time, and being able to have, a loving, recovering community like Recovered Life help me learn how to do it. I watched you guys do it. So that's how
So great. So great. Such great advice, Meredith. I think, as you go through recovery, you start to see, you become aware of more things. But I love that advice about, helping yourself first, being able to get into your own recovery first, and then just understand people's limitations. Michelle Rowley is joining us today, and she is a co-occurring disorder expert with addiction and has a phenomenal room that we have on Recovered Life meeting every week. Michelle, I have a question for you. The holidays could be a very stimulating time. There's a lot going on. The tree, the lights. I mean, literally you have like lights blinking at you, right? How do you control sometimes people in recovery, especially people that might have co-occurring disorders, right? Might not handle overstimulation well, and you can't control everything that you're going to do if you're a guest at somebody's house or somebody's coming over to your home. How do you handle that, Michelle? What are the tips that you've got for that?
Well, one of the main tips I can think of, and this may seem very simple, but is making sure you get enough sleep. If you're going into a situation where you're going to be overstimulated, a lot of mental illnesses come along with having some form of insomnia. I know I have bipolar 2, and there are times that my circadian rhythm will get off. And when it's in the holidays and there's so much overstimulation, I feel that that's easily done. And so that's one of the things. I think getting enough sleep, it may sound simple, but it's so important to your mental health, especially when you're just, for myself, I began drinking alcohol as a way to try to control that. I tried to control my mood cycles by drinking. And we all know that doesn't work. It's a short-term solution that doesn't pan out. So I think that's one of the main things for me, is to make sure I get enough sleep. But second important, if you are a person who takes medication, which I am, is to make sure I'm doing that regularly. Another one that may seem simple on paper, but is really easy to get out of that flow when you have different activities that you're doing, and it's not set to your schedule, but it's set to other people's schedules. So I think that's another one. So getting enough sleep, making sure you're taking your medications, going for a walk. I know I have family members that I need to step away from sometimes, or situations. It really doesn't matter. It could be delightful conversations that are very stimulating, or it could be, opposite things that can happen in families in general. So that's another one, is to kind of step away. And one of the tools I use is doing something one mindfully. So trying to do whatever I'm doing, the task I'm doing, one thing at a time, and kind of that one breath at a time concept to try to center myself. So if I'm putting things in a certain place at the family dinner, this happens, things have to be a certain way in my family, which I'm rather chaotic. So that's not my normal with how I manage things. So just making sure I'm doing that one mindfully, one at a time. Another thing that kind of came up with when Meredith and Kristina were speaking, or what I've heard them say in the past, is one thing I've learned through them speaking about codependency is that fix, manage, and control part of it. I think that's important to remember when you're someone who has mental health issues as well. Don't try to fix, manage, or control your symptoms. Just kind of prepare for all outcomes, and do that by setting the stage for it, getting enough sleep, taking those medications.
Such great advice. One quick question I want to ask you, Michelle, on that is the whole idea of co-occurring disorders, I think is very mysterious for people. Like, let's say that you even have an anxiety disorder, trying to figure out what is anxiety, what is addiction, what is just general life uncomfortableness, right? Is so difficult, I think, right? For people, it's like to be able to separate that out. What do you do if you feel that you're in crisis, right? In the moment, what's the first thing that you do if you can't really kind of figure out what that is?
For me, it's when you're in crisis, you're in crisis. So sometimes that I know as someone who has anxiety, sometimes that can come overwhelmingly. I can prepare the best I can. Um, but I mean, face it, there's times where I've been in a situation where I've had anxiety attacks before. Um, and so just trying to center myself, take myself out of situation. Gosh, one of the things that comes to mind with the holidays is I am so overstimulated by going out into the shops. That is just something that is way overstimulating for me. And it is something that causes anxiety for myself. And I have to limit what I'm doing. And so that would be the same case on the day, I think, when dealing with families is to try to if you're feeling anxiety, to pull yourself away and to remind yourself that this is temporary. This is temporary. It is
Such
going to
great advice.
pass. Yes. Yeah.
That's great.
Um,
That's great. It is temporary and it will pass. And I think it's just getting wrapped up in that moment. Amber Jamison is with us today, and I know you talk a lot about physical sobriety. And one of the issues, which is surviving the family during the holidays, Amber, is actually just physically staying sober. I know when I got sober, the world didn't change. I still had family members that drank, and then you're launched back in, sometimes held captive, right? In a city that you grew up in or whatever, and you are there and everybody's drinking. How do you, Amber, what are your best tips that you give as a coach to help people physically stay sober and set that family visit up for success?
I would say I really focus on a lot of self-care, self-rest, um, making sure I really fill my cup up before I engage in whatever it is that I need to do for the day or for the week. I know a lot of things that have helped me in my recovery are kind of balancing, because normally the holidays for me is when I would usually really engage with my addictions, or there would be a lot of overindulgence in all kinds of things, and it would be kind of me looking for that pleasure. And so I know for me, it's really important that I set up my life where I'm incorporating a lot of pleasure and play. So for me, like a big one is games, like making sure I have board games, different things that I can engage with the people around me if I'm going to be around people in a way that's fun, and it kind of breaks some of that cycle of like, oh, and then we drink and then we do this and then we eat. It's like there's other things to kind of engage myself with. Um, Also, just making sure I take time in the morning and in the evening to really take care and nourish myself in whatever way, whether that's taking a hot shower or hot bath or getting extra sleep, or I have like fuzzy socks, like Christmas socks and sweaters that I like to bring. Just really making sure I pamper myself during this time, because especially for us in recovery, it can be really triggering, and it can be a harsh experience for some of us. So I just really almost up the self-care and babying. I just really baby myself during this time.
I love that. I love that. Now, setting up the success, I love how you said that you're carving out some time for yourself and some things that make you feel comfortable and some things that you can do so that that your brake padding isn't there, so you're like metal to metal when something happens. For those people that are listening to this that say, they might be listening to this on Christmas Eve, New Year's, and they're like, "Oh no, the car's already on fire," right? Like I'm already in a situation where I feel trapped and I want to drink. What is your best advice to them if they're listening to this and they're saying, "Oh, it's already gotten to the point where I'm feeling like I'm getting cravings and things are actually happening and I'm getting really triggered." What would be your advice as a coach to them?
Regulate that nervous system. I know that this is something that's a practice, but really removing myself from whatever situation it is, even if it's going and laying down and putting some heavy blankets on myself and taking some good deep breaths, whether it's taking just really separating myself to a place where I feel safe, getting that nervous system back down to the spot that feels good for me. There's lots of different things that I do, even holding myself, even letting myself cry. Sometimes a good cry is like, honestly, if you can just run away to the closet and cry for a minute, like I feel so much better afterwards. It's hard in those moments. So sometimes I feel for me, to resist it makes it worse. And sometimes just leaning into the softer parts of me help kind of relieve some of that tension.
I love that. Such great advice, Amber. Thank you. Kristina Dennis, I know you talk all about codependency and during the holidays, which seems to really run rampant, right? Like everybody's
Yeah.
expectations. It's crazy. How do you set boundaries? How do you set healthy boundaries during the holiday where
I,
you still are not going to offend people, right? Like
right.
you're still, it's not going to be a combat zone, right? When you walk in there, but how do you set healthy boundaries so that you're going to have a healthy and productive and happy holiday?
Oh, yes, right? It's so easy to be in a reactionary mode. And even people that are not part of recovery are also triggered during this time. So it's going in with this perspective that everybody has a set of emotions when they're walking into holidays. Everybody has expectations. One of the things that I teach my clients and I have learned is that having a communications plan is so smart, and it may feel like you're not being authentic, but knowing ahead of time where you're going to sit, which family member you're going to indulge in conversation with because they're safe, perhaps having a conversation with an ally who's within the family is very, very helpful. But honestly, remember that people really like to talk about themselves. So if you're being highlighted, let's say you're the scapegoat, I was the scapegoat of my family. It was really important that I went in with a list of questions that I was going to ask them about their life, get them talking. They'll think it's the best conversation they've ever had, because really people like to talk about themselves. So I try to go in with this mindset of how do I be of service? And how do I direct the conversation into areas in which I'm comfortable? And, as an addict, there was so many years where it was just about surviving. So kind of setting a little goal for myself to go in and connect with different family members in a very light way. It's like offense instead of playing defense. I find it to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. I remember back when I first got sober and for years, I really looked at the holidays as a way that I could be of service, which took
Hmm.
out a lot of my expectations. And then what would happen is there'd be little jewels of things that would happen.
Yes.
Maybe I'd have a great conversation with a niece or nephew, or, a great conversation with a parent or something, or aunt or uncle. So I do think that that whole that service thing is great. I think one of the things that a lot of people ask, and I know we hear this on Recovered Life a lot in the meetings, is, wow, maybe I just can't have a holiday with certain relatives because no matter what I do, it's always screwed up and it always leaves me a wreck, right? Like I hear this a lot, and it's very sad on one
Absolutely.
hand, right? Because everybody wants to recover and live their best recovered life, but sometimes you can't do it. How do you make that determination of, it's like,
Oh,
what, maybe Christmas isn't the best, maybe a day in August is better to actually
yes.
meet with these people?
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll get together on your birthday, whatever you need to do. But speaking with somebody beforehand and having a game plan is really the way to kind of set your own boundaries. And remember, we do not have to go for the whole weekend. I know just because it was done before does not mean that we need to continue that tradition. So for me, I really look at the best time. I connect with, family on Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day is really about me relaxing and taking care of myself. And, my son's playing with his new electronics, my husband's happy, and I get to just kind of de-escalate because it's such a stressful time in the world. And if you're sensitive, like most of us addicts are, that is piling up on you. And so I don't think it's the time, and I know, Damon, you and I've said this several times before, it is not the time to go in and start talking about deep stuff. You are not going to fix the family on that day. You might feel like it. You may have been having all of this new self-awareness, but remember, they haven't been in the same meetings that you've been. They're exactly the same people as they were before. And so really keeping it light, not making your amends at the Christmas dinner table, not saying, I've changed. Why are you still talking to me like I haven't changed? And just understanding, that is where they are. I'm going to keep my expectations set, and I'm going to just be of service.
That's so funny. I think everybody who is a coach has gotten that call from a client saying, during the holidays, it's like, you know what, this is the time I'm going to, talk to my uncle about what happened in third grade. And, it's just such the most inappropriate time. It's like, you're just setting yourself up. It's not going to go like you think. I'd like to open this up a little bit because we talked a lot about expectations, which I think, and self-care. Self-care being a big one. It's almost all of your tips come down to a self-care thing. What are some other self-care tips, as a group here, as the dream team of getting somebody through the holidays with their family, sober and happy? What are some of the tips that people can deploy during the holidays to make sure it's going to go well for them?
I have 5 self-care tips. They're really quick. I am one that had to make that difficult decision that spending family time with, or spending holidays with my family, is not what is best for me. So I had to come up with some other things, but the best I come up with is no is a complete sentence. Do a feelings check in with yourself, see where you are, and be honest with yourself. The second one is boundaries are beautiful. Use them. They can keep both people safe. The third one is you don't have to stay anywhere that makes you feel unsafe. Always have your own way home. 4th, keep your own cup, or fill your own cup first before you fill someone else's. And last one is do it different. The opposite of addiction is connection. So reach out, ask for help.
Love that.
I
Love
love
that.
that.
Such great advice.
I have a kind of logistics one. I love that Meredith said, have your own way home. Like, that is so powerful and allows you to stay, focused on your own recovery and taking care of your own business. I have one, go full, eat before you go. The whole point of the actual family interaction is to connect, not to eat. And I have low blood sugar. If I go into a event that is already stressful and I'm hungry, it never works out. So it might sound simple, but have that snack in your purse. Let's say dinner is an hour later than you thought it would be. Very, very difficult. So taking care of my physical needs first is one of the things that I always recommend people do.
That is so great. Michelle, what about you? What are some of the tips that you could tell people, to get through, some self-care tips that really work for you?
Goodness, some of the self-care tips is, we've all kind of gone over some of them, but I guess, again, I'm somebody who can be prone to high emotion, especially when I was new to learning, my learning assets and other things with my mental health symptoms. And so I have to take myself out of high emotions sometimes, and recognize is something situational happening that I need to have some self-care going on? And whatever that is. And when I talk about high emotions, too much joy can be a thing for me. Sometimes being too happy will really ramp me up. And kind of like what Kristina was said, disconnect me from making those connections. So that's like one of the things I kind of have to get into place, is regulating my emotions, I think.
Love that. I know, Amber, you were talking a lot about the weighted blankets and all of that stuff, that pampering yourself, making sure you have the things that you need to be able to feel comfortable. One of the things I did, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, is like scheduling downtime. I know that sometimes when I was out and visiting out of town and I had access to a car, I would tell them in advance, hey, you know what? I have to leave from 2 to 4 because I want to go see a friend, or I want to show another family member, an area of town, or a high school that I grew up at, right? Something like that. What are the little things that you use to be able to carve out that time for yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely downtime is so important. A good like reset, I feel like, is always something that I prioritize. Whether that's before I go to an event or visit family, I take time to do like an hypnosis or a meditation, or whether it's while I'm there, if there's some time where I've got 10, 15 minutes, I can take a break, go lay down, find that space within myself that I can totally calm down, reset, get my mind right again, and then engage with wherever I am at that time. I think many resets are really important. They give you a chance to find safety within yourself again very quickly. And it kind of gives you that chance to step out of whatever kind of cycle or spiral may be happening or that might be starting, and just kind of giving yourself that step ahead of whatever you're engaging in. The other thing I was going to say as a self care tip is I truly believe in like, I know that us being in recovery, like celebrating yourself. So like for me, it's like before I go out or go and engage in whatever it is, like taking that extra time to really take extra grooming care and really put in extra time and energy, because we've all worked so hard. We might as well come into some of these celebrations, celebrating ourselves. So that was just something that came up too.
Absolutely right. I think you do have to celebrate. And every day you wake up, especially during the holidays, I think it's a great time if you're doing the deal in recovery, whether it's just you're dealing with codependency or you're dealing with codependency and physical sobriety, whatever that might be, right? Just taking that time to be able to say, hey, I'm sober today and it's working and I'm here, right? What I kind of hear from everybody, which is interesting, and I know this has happened for me, the expectation word. It seems to be
Mhm.
what really brings things down. Like, I know it's like expectations of how people should react when you give them the gift, or expectations of how the day is going to go, right? And it doesn't go that way. One of the biggest joys that I've received in recovery is being able to reframe my expectations and to actually lower them a lot when it
Yeah.
comes to other people, right? What are some of the tips that you guys could give about that expectations word? Because it does seem to be where all of the suffering comes from. It originates in the holidays with these expectations about the way it should be.
Oh, I love this question because, one of the tips that I always give is setting your intention and doing it with another person. And so once you realize that we actually all have some expectations, we all have this idea of what a perfect holiday is. I mean, you can't get away from it. The holiday movies, everybody has these, kind of Hollywood made up stuff about what they think's going to happen. And so what I do with my clients and what I do for my own recovery and serenity is checking in with somebody and saying, okay, this is what I can probably expect. This is what I can control, my behavior. This is what I need to remember before I walk in. And even setting up a call halfway through, just checking in with somebody who does know you and doesn't have the history with you that maybe your mom or Aunt Carol has, is going to help you understand. This is a matter of 3 hours, let's say. I can do anything for 3 hours. I can walk in and be, polite. I can, try to have an intention to be of service. And that usually helps me with my expectations. It is just another day. And that is important for me and my addict brain to remember. This is just 8 hours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's such great advice. I know, Meredith, how do you've got a really great room all about dysfunctional families, right? All about how to kind of identify what's going on and kind of heal within that. How do you reframe the expectations when you feel people are putting expectations on you that you cannot deliver in any way, right? Like, I know that that's happened to me, is that people put expectations on me that there is one, I never accepted them, right? And I could never really live up to that. How do you reframe it so that you could, at least get through, so there's not huge conflict?
For me, and I can speak from coming from a dysfunctional family with my sister, the biggest thing that has been for me has been showing up with love and acceptance, accepting and meeting people exactly where they are instead of where you want them to be. My sister is still in active addiction, and it's very difficult to be around. But I know if I look back into my history, every year I expected her to show up sober. And that was me to manage. I would, by me not managing that unrealistic expectation, it caused a lot of struggle and a lot of unrest. I was not at peace during the holidays. So in this part of my journey in recovery now, just meeting people where they are, showing up with love and compassion and acceptance, and being able to know what their capability is, and not, shoulding all over them. I think that's been a big thing for me is, well, she should be here, or she should be X or Y, or whatever, whenever you put should in front of it, it's disastrous for me. So I guess the best answer is just showing up with love and acceptance. And that has been a big part of my recovery journey. It's helped me tremendously, brought me a lot of peace.
Great advice, Meredith. I was thinking, Amber, about something that you said earlier about, showing up and taking care of yourself and this goes to expectations, a little about what Meredith said. The physical sobriety of it all. If you're struggling, and maybe this is the first couple years and you're not struggling anymore, but look, as people in recovery, you don't really want to hang around people that are drinking. And I know that when I first went to a family function, there were people that did not believe I was an alcoholic, that I was in recovery. They just would not accept it. They just refused, right? Because it said something about them. Later, I figured out, right? How do you navigate around those drinkers? That might be friends, or you run into them at the mall or whatever, right? And you want to hang out with them. How do you navigate that, Amber, when you just feel that maybe this might be a dangerous situation for me?
I will say, for me, I've noticed that the evening time seems to be a little bit more of a danger zone, especially being around family and friends that, are still engaging in drinking or whatever addictions. So sometimes I will I will separate more time to spend time with them during the day, or even not early morning, but like late morning or afternoon. And then in the evening, maybe even setting up a way that I can either watch a movie in another room separate from them, or, oh man, I guess finding things that work for me in that situation. Gosh, it just depends on that. I know for me, like if they're drinking a lot and I still want to be around them somewhat, I will make sure that I have different teas or kombuchas or drinks that I can keep on hand, and then just really watch the amount of time. And if once I start feeling a little funny, I go ahead and get out of the situation. So I really
Great advice.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong boundary about leaving the situation immediately when I start to get to that point.
I love that. It's like creating that strong boundary and, knowing your limits, I think is so important, and not trying to, what I call, John Wayne it. It's like know your limits of what you actually could do and cannot do. Michelle, we're talking about expectations here, and I know you have a family, and it's so hard sometimes if you're the person that's putting on the event, right? Like it shifts sometimes from going to the event in recovery to actually being the person who's putting the event on, and kids and managing that. How do you handle with those family expectations and those roles, right? Like I always did this in the family, but now I'm not necessarily that person anymore. I don't fill that role. How do you handle that in recovery?
Again, by being prepared for the situation. When you have co-occurring disorders, there's that double difficulty, I guess is the best way to say it. You're managing your addiction, and then you're also managing your mental health symptoms. And maybe part of that is that what you can do may be different. I know for me, once with bipolar, once I was on a mood stabilizer, there are some things I couldn't keep up my momentum, I think. And so, yeah, trying to manage those expectations for myself, and then not try to put so much focus on what other people expect from me. And it's comes down to that. Just be possible for all outcomes. Just because maybe your ability to not do something like you used to do it doesn't mean necessarily that that's going to impact the holiday or impact the other people.
I love that. Such great advice, guys. Such great advice. Kristina, final thoughts here on surviving your family during the holidays. What would you tell people who are listening to this and they're like, oh, I'm really worried about this. I'm just not quite sure. I know that they could get through. I think we all know, right? They could get through the holidays happy too. That's another thing, is being
Yes.
happy in the holidays.
Yes.
What's the final thoughts here?
Mine's going to be have a game plan. It's not weird to think ahead of time and, remember who they've been in the past, check your expectations, have a game plan, share it with somebody, and also reach out. So, have that. I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to, walk in through this door. This is what I am expecting. This is how I'm going to behave. And, my intention on this day is to be of service, to receive, and remember, it's only this much time in your life.
Absolutely, it is. It's just a day or a couple of days. All of this expectation that I think we heap on ourselves just causes such grief, right? And just that idea of what I'm getting from everybody here, all the experts in the room, is just to let go a little bit and just to kind of roll with it, not to be so planned, everything with this expectation and desire all the time to make everything perfect. Life's not perfect, right? Life's not perfect. Listen, this has been an amazing episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I would like to remind everybody, we've got some really great Recovered Life meetings that are happening every week on Recovered Life, and they are hosted by a lot of the people that you're seeing on stage here with me today. Michelle, you have got a really great co-occurring disorder room, correct?
I do.
That goes on Saturdays. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, and so the next 2 Saturdays, one's Christmas Eve, and then the next is New Year's Eve, I believe. And so I am going to just kind of tackle the what are the differences between like holiday blues rather than other symptoms of your mental illness, and tackle that. And then for New Year's, like tackle those, when we're setting up those resolutions, what can be realistic things to plan for the next year.
I love that. I love that. Guys, check that out. That is Saturday, and you can check it out at recoveredlife.us. And Meredith, you have a room all about dysfunction, right? All about family dysfunction. If people are suffering from the drama of it all, tell us a little about what they could get in your meeting.
Yeah, my meeting is on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we cover all different kinds of topics. I know this week, this Wednesday coming up, so tomorrow, we're going to be talking about nurturing ourselves. Holiday time is just a time that, we just get beat up. It could be life in general. It could be financial. It could be eating. It could be family things. There's a lot of different ways that we can love and nurture ourselves. And, I'm a big supporter of, keeping our cup full first. We can't show up for others if, from an empty cup, and we can't pour into others from an empty cup. So
absolutely. Yeah. A lot of this is just taking care of yourself first. Amber, I know coaching is a huge thing too. And obviously you're a coach on Recovered Life. Can you talk a little bit about just the role of a coach during the holidays, during this period of time? Because it's so important sometimes to have somebody that can walk you through step by step, what you can, how to actually navigate all of these pitfalls.
Well, my coach right now is Kristina, and she's great. It's so helpful, being able to have her with me in my pocket and being able to, connect with her during any kind of moment, just as that reset, and to kind of, keep my, eyes straight and get through some of the struggling times. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it really helps to, for certain people to be able to walk through that step and have that guidance with people who've actually gone through it in a peer support way. Kristina, setting healthy boundaries, a meeting that we've got on Recovered Life. Tell us a little bit about that for people that might want to work on that little codependency stuff that we are talking about today.
Well, we'll definitely focus on language. I think Meredith said it earlier. It is a new language, learning how to put yourself first and share your needs, to consider them, think about it. And in that space, we do everything. We talk about, some of the reasons why we struggle with having to set boundaries. Here's a total secret. Codependents are made, they're not born. And so we really look at some of the behaviors behind the reason that we struggle with setting boundaries. But we're also going to talk about just how you say it to poor old Aunt Carol that you don't want to talk about the last time that you were super drunk. And so we give real good life tactical sentences so people get used to saying them.
Poor Aunt Carol is going to be disappointed this holiday season.
I know.
So setting healthy boundaries. Thursday at what, 5 p.m.? You could
5 p.m. Pacific. 5 p.m.,
right?
So yeah, it's
awesome.
5 p.m. Pacific, 8 where Meredith is.
So anybody who is suffering during the holidays, if they don't think they're going to be able to survive their family during the holidays, there are some great rooms and coaches here to help you on Recovered Life. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. This was super helpful. Merry Christmas to everybody, and happy holidays, and get through your family during the holidays. Survive it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Connected.
You guys. Merry Christmas.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.